Hey everybody out there, this is Seto, and today for you guys we're going to be talking about a fun way to take Yu-Gi-Oh, I guess you could say. It's kind of like drafting. If you remember playing the battle packs from a couple years ago, I guess you could say like a year or so ago, and playing draft formats where you pretty much get certain packs and then you make and create like a small deck out of it and play against your friends for fun. It used to be included in the YCSs, but they no longer do it. But this is actually a cheaper way of doing it, and it's something that I've done throughout the course of me playing this game of Yu-Gi-Oh for years and years and years. And I talked about it originally when I started this channel years ago, and I just wanted to talk about it here today and just give you a new way going into this format where people don't want to play main meta and they want to play for fun sometimes, of pretty much just using this method of playing the game of Yu-Gi-Oh just for fun, maybe expanding your horizons on cards you didn't know about, player interactions, what's a good card, what makes a good card a good card, what makes a bad card, what makes a great card, things of that nature. So it's called 10 Duels. And what do I mean by 10 Duels? So this is one of my old Yu-Gi-Oh tins that I have since I was literally a kid. As you can see, it's the original Dark Magician tin with the Exodia and everything. This is from years ago. That's why it looks all beat up. I've had this for probably 13 years. But aside the point, I call these 10 duels. And you can do this with your buddies, but I would highly suggest you do this with somebody that you're good friends with, or people you really trust with your cards. So pretty much with a 10 duel, you have your normal cards in here, okay? So you have your normal cards in here that you maybe use for siding. Now, wherever you keep your cards at, you can, call it whatever you want to, box or paper bags or whatever, wherever you keep your cards, your commons that is, that you never use, they just sit around your house, laying around, being lazy, and don't do anything for you. They just sit in your commons box. So pretty much this is just using your commons and your rares to create and craft decks that you can play for fun. So using that 7-colored fish that nobody uses in your commons box, you can play with that for fun by trying to create a deck out of it, out of a tin. So what you pretty much can do is you and your buddy can grab a tin of piece of yours. They can use their tin of commons, you can use your tin of commons, and you pretty much create a deck out of all these cards. So pretty much you just take a deck and you try to create a deck out of it. Granted, it's not going to be an amazing deck. It's not going to be a super fun, it's not going to be like a deck that's going to OTK out of your opponent. It's going to be a long process where pretty much, I summon this monster, you summon that monster, I use this trap in this certain situation. Like, from playing in commons boxes, I learned that interdimensional transporter is actually not a really bad card for a common, really, if you're playing it. Not saying it's a great card in usual casual play, but when you're just playing for fun with whatever cards you can find and you try and get the most advantage out of each and every card, you find that there's some cards that you never thought of before that were really good, and it teaches the value of cards, really, and their versatility. And in the future, it can teach you, hey, I remember this card I used before with this mechanic. Hey, I could try it later on with my deck. And it's given me deck ideas and made me want to build decks out of certain cards just because I found them in the deck. So, you can build like a deck where you pretty much just use, equip spells. So you can use things like Malevolent Nuzzler and just, equip it to whatever you want to, here. So I'm just pretty much saying, guys, you can pretty much just make a deck out of your commons. And I call them 10 duels because I keep most of my commons in tins, Yu-Gi-Oh tins. But you can call it whatever you want to, but pretty much just use your commons with a buddy of yours. You take, maybe they take their own tin, you take your tin, and you pretty much just create decks out of just those cards and nothing else. You can pretty much go by the rules of, if it's a banned card, you only can use one of it. One of that card, and then pretty much what I do is if it's on the limited I just go by the limited list and the whatnot. But if it's a banned card like Pot of Greed, which always seems to find its way into some player's common box, you only can use one of those cards. Or Monster Reborn, you can use one of it, or Premature Burial, whatever. You can use one of that banned card, but you can't use more than one. So pretty much I follow by the way that it's called pretty much traditional Yu-Gi-Oh, where the limited stays, all the limiteds and semi-limited stay the same, but also the banned cards you can use as one-ofs. So it's really fun. You get to use a lot of weird cards you would never ever touch in the game of Yu-Gi-Oh! Probably. It may give you back some nostalgia too, playing things like Armored Zombie from the anime and Mystical Elf set, set this, flip it up, tribute for something. It's just really fun to play with all these old school cards that never get used. You can actually finally figure out why Rush Recklessly is actually not a bad card in the game of Yu-Gi-Oh! It's actually a decent card. You will learn these things that you would never learn otherwise, and all these important things that make Yu-Gi-Oh! Important, and it'll also, at the end of the day, make you a better Yu-Gi-Oh! Player, because it'll teach you deck construction, it would teach you the value of cards, it would teach you how to use your cards to the most advantage, it'll teach you to plus properly, and what I mean by plus properly, you're not just gaining free advantage because I activate said card and gain pluses off of it. No, you have to work to gain advantage over your opponent. It's not just handed to you like many decks are now today. And that overall makes you a better player when you're in the grind game against certain decks in today's game. Especially when you want to play lower tier decks against higher tier decks, you have to learn how to plus properly and get the most bang for your buck. And playing like this can do that for you in the game of Yu-Gi-Oh! It's another way of doing it, and it's fun. You can grab your buddies and do that as well. So yes, these are called 10 duels, as I said before. You can call it whatever, but pretty much just use your commons and your rares and just build decks out of them. I mean, it's just so fun to play with all these wonky cards that you never play otherwise, and try to build a deck out of it as best possible, using Giant Storage of Stone and, Psychic Kappa, which you would probably never use, but whatever you want to, just put in the deck, use equip spells, and just try to gain pluses off that. It's really fun. You use old cards like Fissure that used to be good back in the infancy of the game of Yu-Gi-Oh! And it's really fun to play that. I may do this with somebody. I've done this countless times with my buddies. Granted, some players feel like, oh, well, if your 10 was better than my 10, then you get an advantage over me, or you sacked your way, you luck sacked your way because you have better cards. And granted, isn't that just the same thing that Yu-Gi-Oh! Is nowadays? If an opponent has a more experienced deck, it's just the same exact thing. It's not just that. Because I've heard people say that many times when I've played them in 10 duels. They're like, oh, you just sacked me, or oh, you just had better cards in your 10. Granted, I don't know what's in the dang 10. I never put the cards in there. They've just been sitting there for 5 years. I don't remember what I put in there. But what I'm trying to say, guys, is it doesn't matter. That's the same logic that is in the game of Yu-Gi-Oh! Today. Your deck is better than my deck, so what's the difference? If you understand what I'm trying to say, if I'm playing, Pepe against, Cloudians, I mean, that's, you know what I'm trying to say here, just trying to give examples here of what people have said to me before, but it's a really fun thing to do. I would highly suggest it. Another thing I probably would talk about, I'll let my friend Adam, or one of the guys at Locals, talk about, is another Yu-Gi-Oh! Game that's called War that we play at Locals. This is one thing we play that I brought in and I've played in many Locals. It's called, 10 duels, or Commons duels. Common duels, where you pretty much build your deck of 40 cards and just play with your commons in your commons box. But another thing that my friend Adam, I'll talk to him and see if he can maybe talk about it, is it's something called The Game, which is really cool. It's kind of like the game called War, if you've ever played card games before. It's called War. It's very similar to War, and it's really fun to play with. I've played it before, but he knows more about the rulings and can talk about it more than I did. But like I said, pretty much the rules for the common 10s or whatnot is pretty much you follow traditional format. You only can use one banned card. You follow the ban list pretty much the rest of the way, the limited list. You build a deck of 40 cards and you just play against your opponent. Granted, they're not going to be the best cards, but you can build a fun deck and learn a lot about the game of Yu-Gi-Oh! And improve yourself as a player overall. But tell me what you think about 10 duels, guys. I hope you guys enjoy this video. I know it's not a Yu-Gi-Oh! Related video. It's just another way of how to play the game. It kind of, for us older school players, it takes us back to our roots in the game of Yu-Gi-Oh! Back when we literally had to build decks out of whatever we pulled in packs and starter decks. We had to build decks out of that. And it takes you back to that time in the game of Yu-Gi-Oh! And it's really fun to play with a friend that you really, can enjoy the game with, and you can trust as well, because you want to trust them with your cards. But till next time, guys, take care, have fun dueling, good luck dueling. And I'll mention another quick thing that's really fun when you go in through your commons box and you're doing these 10 duels or commons duels. You may stumble across some very expensive cards like Upstart Goblin that you never thought were in your commons box and you've overlooked for years. And You can sell those, trade them, or whatever later on. But till next time, guys, take care, have fun dueling, good luck dueling, and I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Take care, everybody.